Here, Giles. Thanks for taking time out of your busy schedule to talk with us today on 10 Across Conversations.
Good to be with you, Duke. Thank you for doing the podcast, and I'm excited to talk about Mesa, Arizona a little bit.
And our audience should know that you and I know each other quite well. We've done some great work together in Mesa and in the region. And I've been looking forward to this conversation for quite some time because you are one of the reliable voices in this area to tell it like it is. And I think our listeners will really enjoy your perspective. So give us a little bit of a background as to how you came to be the mayor of Mesa. Now, I think approximately the 30th largest city in the country, if people didn't know that.
Yeah, I wish I could say that it was that I had achieved my lifelong ambition, and that my 12-point plan had successfully got me here. But I kind of, like a lot of things, I kind of fell into this job. I'm born and raised in Mesa. Was always a very partisan Mesa person. Always very proud of my hometown. And so when I was a brand new lawyer, back in my 30s, I got some advice from one of the senior partners that said, "Hey, if you want to be, a prominent person in the community, you should get engaged in city government." So I started volunteering, like a lot of us do, on city boards and committees, and one thing led to another, and I did serve a term on our city council back in from '96 to 2000, and I thought that was a lot of fun, but I kind of also felt like I'd checked the box, on that type of service, and that I'd exercised all the demons from my system as far as political ambition went. And so then I settled down and had a happy, successful, life as an attorney in Mesa for the next 20 years. And then our mayor resigned early to run for governor, and I think it kind of caught people off guard, and everyone was panicked. Oh my gosh, we need to find somebody to do this job. And they said, "Hey, you've got a resume that looks like a mayor's. Why don't you do it?" And I said, "Boy, I got zero interest in that." But I did get involved in trying to help, find someone. And finally, we all came to the realization that nobody else was going to do it. And once I allowed myself to actually think about it, I came to the realization that there's nothing I would rather do than this job. That being able to spend full time, my professional energy working on making my hometown a better place is really a dream job. So that's how I did it. So that was in 2014. I kind of cheated the system a little bit. We're supposed to have two terms, term limits, but because I was a partial term for the first 2 years, I'm going to retire here at the end of the year with 10 years of service.
Mm-hmm. And you have absolutely embraced the job. It's clear that you take pleasure in it. You take joy in responding to members of your community. I know when I see you on Main Street or in restaurants or wherever it might be, people want to talk to you. You're more than happy to engage. And so, like so many mayors say, it's a difficult job. There's no doubt about it. But you are close to the people, if you will. And it's clear that you embrace that. So,
yeah.
But
well,
you're not.
My fondest hope for everyone, Duke, is that you could be the mayor of your hometown. It really is a calling, much more than a job, and it's a great opportunity to serve.
But what's interesting about your situation is that, yes, you're very close to the situation, literally and figuratively, but you're also called upon to opine on regional, state, and national issues, because I think you are clearly a thinker, and you are, both in the job that you hold, nonpartisan to some degree in your outlook. I understand you're Republican, but the way you go at issues, I wouldn't know that. I wouldn't know what party you're affiliated with. It seems that you attack each issue based on the data that you have available, and you have thoughts about that. So talk about taking a very local role to the national level and why you're so frequently called upon to offer your opinion on items.
I can't remember who it was that said that all politics is local. It was, I think, one of the Chicago.
I think it was Tip O'Neill.
Oh, Tip O'Neill, yes. And well, I think there's, I believe that's 100% true. Everything that is happening in Washington, D.C. is kind of conceptual. And even at the state capitol, we're talking about ideas for government, but where it actually happens is where people live. I'm a patriotic American, and I'm also very fond of my governor and legislator, and I mean I admire their commitment, and they do good things. But really, 9 out of 10 things that you get from tied to government come from your local government. If you're having a bad day and you dial 911, you're not thanking the state government or the national government. If you go to the park or the museum or the golf course, or you turn on the tap or flush the toilet, really multiple times every day you are interacting with your local government. And interacting with your state and federal government is something that's a rarity. And so it's hard to overstate the importance of local government and all of the issues that we're debating, right now in presidential politics and everywhere else. Really, the way that they impact people's lives, a lot that goes through city council meetings and school board meetings. A lot more than it does at the higher echelons.
But maybe it's that perspective and level-headedness as you approach these issues in your hometown that causes people, again, to ask your opinion on things that they're more than conceptual, but I know what you mean at the federal level. And you have been known to buck the conventions of who you're willing to endorse or what you're willing to say, and always with the most gracious tone. But talk about looking at the field of play right now in national politics and what you have been required to do based on your perception of where things need to go and what that's meant to your outlook on things.
Yeah. Well, I think it's easy to be disappointed in in the way that that partisan politics has taken our country and our states. And the place to look for good behavior in government and to try to model that is at the local level. And so I think that people like me do have an important role to play in that, to take a nonpartisan. Yes, I am registered as a member of a party, but that's more out of necessity than out of some sort of passion. And so I've never really. It's always, and I think most people feel that way. We're not. I've never had any qualms about crossing party lines in who I voted for. Long before I got involved in politics. So I think that's the normal way to approach life. So I think we ought to be suspicious of people that are such partisans that they vote for someone based on their party registration.
Mm-hmm. So you have gotten involved at the federal level, less so in government, but more on issues through your work with other mayors and with Climate Mayors, another organization. Right. So tell me how you translate the local to the national, but also back again. What has your involvement at the national level and those kind of discussions meant to what you have brought back to Mesa and your perspective on what you believe your role is as mayor of the city?
Yeah. Well, the reason I felt compelled to get to play roles at the national level and to seek and to accept positions on national organizations is because I think that all of that impacts directly my ability to do my job in Mesa, Arizona. I think for me to be successful in Mesa has to be vocal on the national and even world stage. Sometimes I tell people that I have the disadvantage of having grown up here because growing up here, you come. There's a certain amount of modesty and humility that's baked into coming from Mesa, Arizona. We're very proud of our humility. I like to tell people, and so we consider this as just an average, middle of the road, average community. But the truth is that we're far from that. That Mesa is recognized at the national level as a city where you come to learn how to that we do it right. We care about the details. Sure, I'm not saying that we are the best at everything. We're not. We have a lot to learn from other communities, and that's the other reason I get involved in the national level is just to shamelessly steal ideas from other mayors and other cities. Because the challenges that we're facing in Mesa are the same that cities across the country are facing, and many of them are further along in figuring out the solution to those problems than we are. So we can save ourselves a lot of time and a lot of money by just going someplace else and critiquing the way they did it and bringing it back and utilizing those good ideas in Mesa. So, for example, I have been involved in climate mayors and the electric vehicle working group and things like that because I want the Mesa climate action plan to be successful.
Mm-hmm.
And for me to do that, I have to engage at a national level and bring back best practices and lobby for things to happen that will put Mesa in a position to be successful. I mean, one of the lessons of the pandemic for us was the reality of food insecurity and housing insecurity in my city. And so for me to adequately respond to those challenges, I have to engage in the national level and advocate for, that's why I was the chairman of the Ending Childhood Hunger campaign. And why I was one of the co-chairs of the mayors and CEOs for housing investment was because food insecurity and housing insecurity are two of the top issues that the mayor of Mesa needs to be working on.
So we'll dig into those issues shortly, and I do want to hear some more specifics about those and immigration and other things where you've held very significant positions, again, at the national level. But I liked what you said about Mesa. You know, we're proud of our modesty. That's a great phrase. But Mesa is getting on the national radar for other reasons right now. It's booming. You are attracting companies that we all know, especially in the tech sector and elsewhere. And so you're enjoying a lot of attention because Mesa is a very attractive place to do business, and you seem to have it figured out, and you're welcoming in that regard. You're also attracting some of those businesses that we all know, as I mentioned, affiliated with the tech sector, that are heavy on water usage and power usage. So tell us about the benefits of having these jobs and these very significant institutions come to your city and then accommodating them.
Great. Well, certainly one of my goals is to future-proof Mesa and to make Mesa a community where my children and grandchildren can, if they choose to, they can stay and they can have every advantage, you know, that they don't have to move to Austin or Salt Lake or Denver or one of these other cities that obviously, you know, is doing it right and is going to be very relevant in the future. We want Mesa to be on that list of cities. And so far, so good. So we are at a very fortunate time in Mesa where we're seeing a lot of the planning and the investment in infrastructure that we've been doing for decades has now matured to the level where we have become one of the most attractive places in the United States to start or expand a business. For example, I was on our city council, as I indicated, back in the 1990s, just a couple of years after the United States Air Force handed the keys to Williams Air Force Base to the city. And we had thousands of acres of developable property around 10,000-foot runways, but it was out in the middle of the desert surrounded by rattlesnakes and cactus. And we didn't know, you know, we were like the dog that caught the car, you know, what we don't know what to do with this thing. And so it has taken decades of investing in freeways and partnering with universities and building master plan communities and doing everything we can to create this environment where now Apple, Google, Meta, Gulfstream, Boeing, you know, are lining up saying, hey, Mesa, we want to invest billions of dollars in your community. Do you have the workforce that would support that type of an investment? Mm-hmm. So it is, yeah, so that's kind of how we got here.
And our listeners should know that Mesa and Arizona State University enjoy an incredible working relationship. So turning that Air Force Base into a community of learners and people who are upskilling and all kinds of other things that are happening there is something you've obviously inspired, but we've done together to some extent, and we have plans to do much more based on where things are going there. But one of those companies that you attracted here, which relates to, again, jobs and industry, but also climate, is carbon capture. Mm-hmm. And so a large tract of land is now being dedicated to sucking CO2 out of the atmosphere, and Mesa is on the front edge of that. Tell us about that combination of attracting business, but also seeming to address climate change.
Yeah, thank you. Carbon capture is a really a fun business to talk about because it seems almost too good to be true. This company is manufacturing machines that literally can suck the carbon out of the air. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, this if this is true, right? That this might play a significant role, in helping all of us achieve our climate action goals of becoming carbon neutral and reducing greenhouse gases. And it's hard to overstate the significance of the potential for that. So yeah, we are very proud that they've chosen to build their manufacturing facility in Mesa, and that organization is not just about carbon capture. They have an incubator for all kinds of climate-related other businesses that are very innovative, and so ASU takes a lot of pride in the fact that they value innovation, and the City of Mesa does as well. And so, yeah, I think people are going to be coming to Mesa to learn more about this and to look for innovative ways to respond to the climate challenges that we have.
It's interesting the way you just put that. It's almost too good to be true. And we both hope, and I'm sure our listeners hope it is true, because we need to act and we need to act quickly. When you're having discussions with a business like that, and again, a lot of innovators are coming here, setting up shop, and we want good things to happen as a result. When you're, as a very smart person, listening to the pitch and what's expected, what's that conversation like?
When you do this job for a while, you start you have to become a little bit protective, right? Because there's people walking in with pretty pictures all the time saying, "Hey, Mayor, we want to do this development, and look how pretty this is," and they're not afraid to overstate, to be overly optimistic. So you have to be a little pessimistic, right? And I mean that's the nature of our jobs, is to protect the public infrastructure and to look for good opportunities and ferret out which ones aren't real. And so that's, we do that every day. There's for every good idea that we embrace, there's probably a few ideas that we don't.
Yeah, and obviously that's a home run if it works for climate responsiveness as well as business and jobs and other things. But getting back to the things that you want to achieve as a climate mayor, as the mayor of Mesa, things that are in your climate action plan. You address heat, you address water, you address transportation. A couple of those are worth noting. I remember when you and I were talking, and you were really excited about your electric fire truck. So how's that working out? And I think you and I have been in touch with regard to what's going on at the federal level between DOT and DOE and issues around transportation and the hopes for what that looks like in the future. So tell us about your electric fire truck, but also transportation as it relates to Mesa.
Well, thank you. So a lot of this, back when the Bipartisan Infrastructure Act was happening, the Inflation Reduction Act, the federal government was putting its money where its mouth was, right, and coming up with billions and billions of dollars to invest in this type of, again, innovative technology that was going to be part of the solution for us reaching our climate action goals. And so they had to, and as a part of that, when they were passing the Bipartisan Infrastructure Act, they said, how are we going to practically solve the problem of remodeling the entire, electric infrastructure in the United States to accommodate electric vehicles? And so they said, well, we'll kind of offload that to a board that we'll appoint called the Electric Vehicle Working Group. And so when that happened, and I became aware of it, I immediately realized that I wanted to be a part of that, so that I could be an advocate for cities, but also for my region, to be relevant in that. So it was important to me to be a part of that, and I haven't. And thankfully, I did get that opportunity, and so now you have this joint office. I know you've talked with Gabe Klein, and you're up to speed on how the federal government is reorganizing to address this challenge, but. The joint office is a child of energy and transportation, and that's the one that's where this electric vehicle working group is housed. And so it's a great opportunity for me to gather with 22 other people. I'm the only elected official there. Everyone else, is a person of substance. They're from industry or from manufacturing, and they know what they're doing. And so it's important to me to bring the perspective of government to that discussion, and it's been very, very valuable so far.
Well, you're certainly a person of substance, and I know they're glad to have you. With regard to heat, one of the solutions that we hear almost anywhere, especially in the Tenacross region, is we need more tree canopies, especially in those communities that are typically short of the resources that other neighborhoods might enjoy. But tree canopies also involve water. And I must admit, this year I have noticed, even on my own modest little piece of property, vegetation's taking a beating.
Yeah.
And water then has to supplement some of what the sun's doing, but even that doesn't cure everything. The sun is harsh. So how do you? I'm not. This question could go to a whole lot of people, not just you in Mesa, where I know you're working on this, but to hydrologists and agronomists and others. How do we balance the need for a tree canopy and shade and the water that's needed to make it happen?
Well, my experience has been the same of yours. Last July, as you know, we had an entire month over 110 degrees, and I had some trees on my property die. It was painful to watch, in spite of my best efforts. So.
Hmm.
I think we do have to be careful with the types of trees that we're planting. There has to be. I mean, City of Mesa just hired an urban forestry person, right? I guess I didn't. I guess that makes a lot of sense, right? But
Hmm.
maybe we should have hired an urban forester decades ago.
Hmm.
But we're catching on to the fact that we need to be very deliberate, and there's a certain amount of sophistication in expanding the tree canopy, but doing it in a way that's going to be sustainable, and we don't want to plant a bunch of trees that aren't appropriate for where we are and what we're experiencing.
Yeah.
So right now, Mesa has a tree canopy coverage of about 7%, right, 6 or 7%, and Nature Conservancy has told us that probably a healthier tree canopy coverage would be something more along 16%.
Hmm.
So this million tree challenge that we launched was not just a random number that we came up with. Literally, to get from where we are now to where we want to be, that's going to require about 1 million more trees.
Hmm.
So this is it's not a pie in the sky thing. It's a calculated effort to get from where we want to be to from where we are to where we want to be. And so we have been incentivizing and planting thousands of more trees than we have been in previous years. We're still lagging behind, our goal, but certainly we're going to make some impact. And just cities alone, I mean, can just our organization, we can be very impactful. We already are responsible for about 40,000 trees on City of Mesa property between parks and common areas, and so that's great. It's nowhere near 1 million.
Yeah.
I mean, but we can continue to grow that and to manage our own forestry in a way that's going to be responsible. The same is true when it comes to, for example, fleet vehicles. If
Right.
you look, I mean, if just the City of Mesa, if we adopt, electrify our fleet, that's going to have a tremendous impact. Right now, we're focusing on our light duty vehicles. That doesn't sound like a lot, but just our city alone, we have about 1,300 light duty vehicles. That's pickup truck like vehicles, and so we're buying as many Ford Lightnings as they will sell us. We've already got our first 70 or so, but we'll continue to work on that, and that kind of sets that. That's why I was so enthusiastic about the idea of the electric fire truck. We took delivery of the first full-sized all-electric North American fire truck, and we're learning a lot. I mean, we're very glad that we bought it when we did. It cost about twice as much as a normal fire truck, but right now the cost has gone up even more than that. So we're lucky that we got it when we got it. But between us and the manufacturer and all the other fire departments that are coming to Mesa on a daily basis and kicking the tires and trying to learn about the pros and cons of an electric fire truck, it's been an amazing investment. The guys who ride on the truck love it. If you think about being a firefighter and living and spending your entire life around a diesel vehicle, you can see why your quality of life would be so much better with an electric vehicle.
Well, related to quality of life and tree canopies and the services needed to support a thriving community, housing is right up there. And you're one of the fastest growing cities in the United States and the fastest with regard to economic development by some standards. So more people are coming to Mesa. They're looking for housing of all kinds. And I think you and I and others in this region see the need for a diversity of housing types. So talk about both locally and how that plays at the national level when you're in those meetings with other mayors about how everybody's trying to tackle the housing challenge and your approach to that.
Well, the housing crisis is nationwide, but I think it's been particularly felt in the Phoenix area. I've heard that our housing inflation, leads the nation, and certainly we've seen Mesa's. We've always kind of joked that Mesa's middle name is affordable because that's when a family moves to the Valley of the Sun, if they show up in a minivan, people just point to Mesa and say that's where you ought to go because that's a community that is affordable, and it's a community that values education, and it's a great place. We're known for being a good place to raise a family, and so affordability is a big part of that. So we take it very seriously, and in terms of what can we do to keep financial burden at a minimum on folks, and to find ways for them to enjoy a good quality of life without an exorbitant price tag. And so housing affordability is something that is of great concern. Now, a big part of the cause for this, I think, is beyond our control.
Yeah.
They're global and national economic factors having to do with interest rates and workforce and the cost of materials. And so I think to some extent this is a cycle, and we're just going to have to hang on tight, and hopefully interest rates will come down, and we'll see housing affordability come back to something that's more sane.
But nevertheless, you get together with mayors and others to talk about this, and presumably you have some CEOs or some other business leaders in the room to try to understand, I guess, their bottom line issues and what you can do together. But you don't want to be a spectator on the sidelines, but at the same time,
No.
you're not in that industry. So how do those conversations go?
Yeah, well, it's been a mixed bag. I have been, in my role as the co-chair of mayors and CEOs for housing investment. I have been in a lot of national meetings with a lot of, and done a lot of fly-ins with Mayor Bass from Los Angeles and others, lobbying HUD and congressional leaders to do what they can. There absolutely are some things that we can do at the national level to, particularly in a crunch time like now, ease the burden that the families are feeling. There's some changes at HUD having to do with CDBG funds and how much can be spent on housing services as opposed to capital, and so we're encouraging a lot of the tweaks, to kind of help us through this time right now. Another thing that I've done that not everyone has appreciated, though, is I think. I hearken back to the old saying that never let a good crisis go to waste, and there are people in the development industry that have been pushing for some housing legislation, and it's got some good stuff in it, but it also sometimes will try to gut local control. It'll kind of create this straw man that zoning is the boogeyman. Right. And that the reason that we're not able to build houses is because cities are putting unreasonable restrictions, and unreasonable requirements on developers. There's some truth to that. I'll be the first to admit it. And we do need to streamline some things. And the waiting periods are painful. And so cities do need to do some self-examination and not, if there are barriers to housing development that we can take down, I embrace that. But at the same time we do that, let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater and say zoning is bad, local control is bad, neighborhoods having a voice in what goes on in their communities is bad. We need to have a balanced approach.
Mm-hmm. And, in the 10 across geography, we have places with, as is often described, no zoning, like Houston, yet they too have a housing problem and a homelessness problem. Now, they're getting after it in a pretty good way, but nevertheless, zoning is a double-edged sword. I think it's about regulation in the best sense, making sure we're building things that are safe and adequate. But sometimes it does make it difficult to do some innovation that I think either builders or developers might want to see, and things can be conjoined in interesting ways that zoning might not allow. So I think that there's room on all sides for improvements to zoning. I'm sure you would agree. And I see you doing innovative things in downtown Mesa to try to create a walkable community and some things that are uh, within easy reach of each other that makes for a lively place.
Absolutely, flexibility is key in a lot of those. I mean, if you have to go to a very prescriptive zoning code that dictates, that takes all the creativity and being able to adapt
Yeah.
to what is going to be successful, then that's overly prescriptive, and nobody would advocate for that.
Yeah, and again, just for our listeners, you and I and others have enjoyed a remarkable relationship in downtown Mesa, where now there are major university facilities that are attracting students, which in turn are attracting developers to build housing, and other things are happening there. And having that kind of mix, which is for Mesa and other places unprecedented, is producing results that zoning alone couldn't cause to happen. But one of
Right.
the things I really want to talk to you about is immigration
Sure.
because again, you've been on the leading edge of this conversation. We are a border state. Mesa may not be a border city, but you're well aware of people in your community coming from other places looking for a better life, and we want to try to accommodate that. I think you and Governor Hobbs and Mayor Gallego were just in Mexico City talking about the issue, and I know you've been very active on that front in DC. Talk about perceptions of immigration and the immigration as you've seen it as the mayor of a major American city in the Southwest.
Sure. Well, I mean, I remember talking about this when I was on our city council back in the 1990s,
Hmm.
right? And, asking for more federal engagement on the issue, and we've immigration is one of those issues that that both parties love to talk about because it can be emotional, and it can drive fundraising, and it's easy to paint the other side as bad people when you're having an immigration discussion. So people who don't have to deal with the negative consequences of a bad immigration law and policy love the issue, and those of us who live and breathe it, we're kind of very frustrated by why nothing ever seems to happen.
Hmm.
Um, and so that's why I was so disappointed with the failure of this last Senator Sinema and others working so hard on coming up with something that was far from perfect, but was a substantial improvement over the current immigration laws that we have now, only to see it die a political death.
Right.
I think immigration is one of those issues that we've got smart people understand it and they know what needs to be done to fix it. And if
Mm-hmm.
we would treat this like a problem to be solved in a very short time frame, we could get smart people together and come up with the changes that need to be made to the immigration codes and the border policies, and fix this problem.
And
Uh,
I'm sure in your position as chair of the Immigration Task Force of the U.S. Conference of Mayors, you personally, but also collectively, tried to bring whatever you could to bear on the decision making that would produce some results. Did you make that case, which I know that you did, and why was it less than successful in terms of making that point as persuasively as I'm sure you wanted to?
yeah. Yeah, it was a bitter defeat because this is such an important issue. Why was it ultimately unsuccessful? It was partisan politics. It was
Hmm.
the fact that there are still people that, and this is a very inflammatory issue. So there are people that want to capitalize on that rather than see the human side of it. See the suffering that's associated with it. See the thousands and thousands of lives, that are being adversely impacted by our failure to manage this appropriately.
Yeah, and there's that side of it, which is tragic in so many ways. And then there's the other more normative side. You might have seen an editorial that was in the Arizona Republic by our friend Eddie Jones, an Arizona architect, saying, having built border crossings for the federal government, when you see the orderliness of the passage, people who live on both sides of the border in their daily lives, and what a sophisticated and thoughtful kind of gateway can look like, it is possible to live cheek by jowl with neighbors coming from another country in a very effective and dignified manner. So that's the border crossing that I think people don't see. It's interesting to
Oh,
have one of our fellow
yeah.
Arizonas step up and say that.
Absolutely. I think, and this issue, that's one of it's viewed as being a negative issue, and immigration is viewed as being a bad thing by some people because there are, there's problems at the border, and so
Hmm.
people who aren't from border communities or border states think, oh, well, borders are bad,
Yeah,
immigration is bad. That's the opposite of I mean, the border in Arizona is a huge asset,
right.
as I think you know, and the economic impact of our relationship with Mexico is vitally important to the success of Arizona and to the country.
And as
So
manufacturing comes from China to Mexico, that border is going to have to be more of a gateway than a wall.
yeah, and so we do need to tweak, the human tragedy portion of this, so that we don't castigate, the border and immigration as something negative when it's in fact just the opposite.
Hmm. So, in the little time we have left, you and I joked at the beginning, there seem to be some things going on in the political world almost on a daily basis. And again, I know people are seeking your counsel because you have a very calm look at what's happening and how can we make the best of things. But your observations of I could say the past month, and I'm not looking for trouble here, nor am I looking for you to make some declarations about individuals, but what a complicated time and things changing rapidly. Your perspective on our, not so much our politics, but governance in this country and where it might be headed.
I think governance in in Arizona and in our nation for the last few months or years, I think has actually been good. But that's not what you would believe if you just come home and turn on cable news. The situation is painted as we're in the worst of times and that we're in the deepest of economic recessions and that the economy is headed, it is in a downward spiral, and that's just as we talked about earlier. It, my experience is we're experiencing unprecedented growth and success. Yes, I mean inflation is out of control, but I don't think that'll be the case much. That will run its cycle and we'll be back.
Mhm.
But I think there used to be this pendulum. You'd see things move to the right, you'd think things move to the left, but there was this some sort of a force that would always attract governance and public opinion kind of back to the middle. And I don't know if that's the norm anymore. I mean,
Mm.
now you have media organizations and other forces that are very very profitable because
Right.
they are able to feed these appetites on the extremes, and to give people that dopamine charge, whether you're far right or far left. And so we come home and put something in the microwave and turn on cable news, and to whichever our choice is, and there's nothing that's bringing us back to the middle. So I think
Yeah.
still most of the country, most of our state is in that middle
Right.
place, but it's there's not an incentive for the extremes to moderate and for us to rally around something in the middle.
Yeah. If you look at polls on various issues that are contentious, seemingly contentious, the way you just put it, gun control or abortion or other things, when you look, as you just described, where people are, the bulk of them are in a centrist position, but that doesn't seem to be reflected. But very few people say what you just did. It's highly profitable to create dissension.
Mhm.
And in a country built on capitalism and other things, that sort of is part of the deal, I guess. But I think people forget that others are enjoying the benefits of dissension as they're uh, 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 promulgating it, and that needs to be said more. I think.
Yeah, there are fortunes yet to be made,
Yeah,
in that area. So
yeah. Well,
hopefully we'll see things like open primaries, and there's a movement, I think, to kind of respond to the structure that has created this polarized
yeah.
environment that we're in.
Well, as people are looking for a lack of polarization, And Arizona is in the spotlight because of the position we play in the upcoming federal election. And now we have one of our senators being spoken about very frequently. I'm sure, again, your phone is ringing or your email is filling up, and people want your opinion about this, if not your involvement in some way, shape, or form in the future. What does the future look like for you and roles you might be able to play? Because I know you're going to be stepping down as mayor in just a few months.
Yeah, the answer is I don't know. I would love to continue to be involved in this in dealing with these issues. They're very important issues. I don't aspire to continue perhaps as an elected official, but if there are opportunities in other places, to continue to be engaged, I would welcome that. And it is fun to see Arizona in the middle of these conversations. I think Senator Kelly's potential involvement on the ticket is very exciting. But it's clear that whether he is the nominee or not, he's a person of national profile, and that's fun to see Arizona get that attention. And again, the issues that are driving this election, Arizona is the poster child for nearly all of them. So we are going to get more than our share of attention over the next 100 days, and probably going forward. I think Arizona is center stage. When I travel and go to national meetings and meet people for the first time, and I tell them where I'm from, more often than not, I'll just get this longing look in their eyes, and they'll go, "Oh, I would love to be there," because sometimes we forget this is a desirable, like you say, this is a desirable place to be. We've got a lot to be proud of, and we are very attractive. So that's also a tremendous challenge, to respond to that and that growth in a responsible way, and to continue to provide the quality of life that makes us an attractive place.
Well, that's where I wanted to end this. So when you look at growth and making this an attractive place and still doing it in a sustainable and responsible way, looking out at Mesa 10 years, 20 years, what does it look like? And by the way, you have given some of the most compelling state of the city addresses any mayor has ever given. And for our listeners, you should go onto YouTube and see these productions. They are quite something. And you are a remarkably good actor and participant in these things. But what does Mesa look like in a couple decades?
Well, what I do say at those state of the city addresses is that I think Mesa's best days are ahead of that, are ahead of us, and I say that as a very someone who has a lot of nostalgia, about the city that I grew up in, and a lot of affection for the Mesa, the current Mesa and past Mesa. But we are, for the reasons that you and I have been talking about, for the last several minutes, we're in a position to continue to get better. And to raise the bar, and to focus on more quality, and to be one of those communities that I described earlier, where I'd like my children and grandchildren to be able to stay, instead of having to go to Austin or Salt Lake or Denver. We're going to, people from those areas are going to be saying, "Man, I wonder if I can find a job in Mesa." And we're solidly on that path, so I'm very optimistic. Our downtown and our industrial areas and our residential areas are all headed in a good direction, and so I'm excited to spend the next whatever days I have left watching how things continue to improve in Mesa.
Well, I just want to say, I'm sure that our listeners are thinking, this is what I would like to see in a public servant, someone who's thoughtful, rational, and excited about the future, and can verbalize that and advocate for your community in the way that you do. So Mayor Giles, thank you so much for your time today. You've been a spectacular mayor. I wish you all the best in the things that you'll be doing in the future. I'm sure they'll be very exciting. So thank you so much.
Duke, thank you for all that you've done for our region and for the entire Tenacross part of our country. This is fabulous, and we appreciate the intellect that you bring to this discussion.